Alright, so today we're going to be tying a streamer pattern, which I usually don't tie, and this is one of the first I've done on my channel, so I hope you enjoy this video. But we're going to be tying the egg-sucking leech, which is a highly effective pattern. It's a very famous pattern, and it works really well for almost anything from bass to sea-run salmon, so let's get tying. Materials you'll need are a hook, which I believe this is a 3XL streamer hook, and I have a hot orange bead is what it's called, and that's what I'm using for the head. You'll need lead wire to make wraps for the underbody, brown dubbing for the body, and a zonker strip. The thread I'm using is black thread, which I feel like is kind of obvious, but I just always want to point out all the details to my flies. Alright, so to start this fly, I take my lead wire, and I make probably 12 wraps. That's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I'm using my older scissors. These are really dull. I used to tie a lot with craft fur, and I was unaware that it was a hook duller. So those scissors are basically worthless for anything other than cutting down wire at this point. Now I'm going to take my bodkin or tying needle, and this is the one I used for super glue, so it's pretty gummed up. And I'm just going to spread a bit of super glue, which, I mean, it doesn't really matter with super glue. This is just Gorilla Glue from, like, the dollar store or something. So you don't have to be fancy with it, although I know that Fly Tires Z-Mint is a very popular one. Now I'm going to take my lead wire wraps, and I'm going to jam them into the bead head to keep the wire still. And in doing this, you also keep the bead head where it's at. Now I'm going to begin taking wraps of thread. And once I get going a little, I'm going to pull out some thread and give it a little counterclockwise spin to flatten it out so that I can effectively cover all the wire in just a few wraps. You don't want any of the wire to be visible. Now I'm going to create a little bit of a thread ramp going up to the wire so that it's not just a ridiculous shape once you tie on there. I'm going to bring my thread to around the barb of the hook. I did forget to mention this, but you will also be using copper wire. Now I'm going to take my zonker strip and cut probably about, I'd guess this is like 5.5, 6 inches, because you'll need a bit extra to stretch across the hook. And then you can always just trim your excess, because you have to use that to make the dubbing loop type thing for the collar. Now I want about 2 or 3 inches hanging off, so I'm going to not really stretch, but strip some of those back, and I sort of want about a hook shank length, or the hook length. So I'm measuring that up to be just longer than the hook. And it doesn't matter if you catch a few fibers. So I'm just taking tight wraps. And this material, I don't know what it is about these rabbit zonker strips as opposed to other materials. They require very few wraps to be permanently secured to that hook. Like, they will not come off. Now I'm going to take my copper wire and use my dull scissors, my wire scissors at this point, to trim it. If you do not have a pair of dull scissors, and do not want to dull the scissors you're currently using, I would recommend getting a pair of nail clippers. Which there's a solid chance you already have those. I'm going to take tight wraps to secure the wire. And you see it slipped there. That's what you have to be careful with the wire, is it's very slippery under the hook. So I'm just going to continue making the tightest wraps I can make. And then, even then, I'm going to double what I think is necessary to hold it down. You do not want that wire to slip. Alright, so now that the wire is tightly secured, I'm going to take my dark brown dubbing and begin twisting it onto my thread. To start, I'm just going to be dubbing this little area that was created with the thread where I secured the zonker strip and wire to the hook. And then once that's covered up, it gets a lot smoother with wrapping the dubbing. I strip that back and put a little bit of thread there to hold it back. And I'm going to continue the process. You can just, I just licked my fingers to just sort of grip onto the dubbing better. Another thing you don't really think about, but it really does help you grip onto the dubbing when you're wrapping it, is you can wash your hands before you tie to just sort of rinse away all those excess oils from food or whatever it is you may be doing. You're going to use a good bit of dubbing on this fly, so I'm going for a fairly thick dubbing noodle, because I'd rather just dub it once and get it all over with than continually dub and just waste time. I'm going to continue the process, and this, there doesn't really need to be like a perfect body or anything. I recommend that you taper it. You can do a dubbing loop if you want it to look a little, more natural, more furry and buggy. But I'm just wrapping it. Most people who tie these try to get the dubbing really tight, and I recommend that too. I'm not getting it especially tight on this one, but I am trying to not have it be really loose. Just bumped into my camera, sorry about that. Now I'm just gonna continue, and I'm getting close to the end, so yep, that's my last wrap that's needed. So now I'm gonna take my zonker strip, and at this point I can strip a little bit of the fibers, just pull them off. It doesn't take much to get them off. Almost nothing really. So I'm just going to strip the whole back end of the fibers. However, hold on to these fibers, because when you do the dubbing loop thing with these, you're going to need them. So I'm just putting these fibers around the base of my vise on my tying desk. And I'm going to wrap my my zonker strip back onto the hook. And I am going to use my dull scissors to cut those, my wire scissors, because I can see these as being one of those things that just dulls your scissors, like craft fur EP fibers or stuff like that. I don't know why the bead looks so weird on the screen. It's a lot of, it's a much brighter color, but it looks almost blurry on my screen right now, so. Now I'm going to take counter wraps of wire to sort of rib this fly. It gives it a nice effect. Alright, so there I caught some of my fibers, and you do not want to catch your fibers at all if possible. This is a very important step, is to not catch your fibers, which is why you counter wrap. I don't know exactly what, but when you counter wrap, you catch, I don't know why is what I meant to say, but you catch a lot less of your fibers when you're counter wrapping. I think it's just because your brain sort of does it in reverse. I'm going to continue the process, screwing up as few of these fibers as I can. Alright, see, I caught way too many back there. So, I just want to bring it through any reasonable gaps I can find to where it's all evenly spaced out instead of just looking stupid like it did back there. See, right there, I got too much again. So I'm going to strip back just that little bit and go in at it. Now I'm just going to take like probably one more wrap of wire from where I'm at right now. And that's just going to be like the final one. And you see, I'm going to redo this last one because it did screw with the fibers a little more than I'd want it to. Alright, so now the wire wrapping is complete, and you can strip back that and see how it'll look. And it looks real good. I really love the profile on this fly. Those were not my dull scissors, that was a mistake. Alright, whatever. Now I'm going to form just a little dubbing loop. And I'm not sure where I put my dubbing loop spinner, but I cannot find it right now, so I'm just using my hackle pliers. It works just as well, same concept, just spin it up, and it does the same thing. So I'm gonna get just a nice pinch of these fibers that I stripped in my finger. I'm just gonna load them up in the dubbing loop, and you want like really long fibers, like the longest ones you can find, which the fibers on these aren't particularly long. And since I'm using my hackle pliers, I want to hold them while I twist them in. See, they slipped there, so that's the one thing I don't like about them. They're designed to grip larger feather stems. Alright, so now I'm just going to spin it as much as I can. I'm just going to go in with my fingers and mess around in there. Alright, so there. Now we have something that looks pretty good for what we're going for here. So I'm just going to use my rotary tool. Grab the thread. Grab the dumbing loop, I should say, so. Because you're grabbing it with your thread, so. Yeah. And see, I tied that in a bit too loose, so there's not much there. But you can see the concept is there. It doesn't look terrible. I am going to redo this, however, because I don't feel I got that quite well enough. And this is, I guess, this is fairly common when you're tying these sometimes. It's irritating, but it's one of those things you just got to learn to deal with and roll with. So I'm just going to trim that and get some wraps down right here. And this is turning into a very long tying video, so I'm going to try and make this move along quickly. We are at 13 minutes and 55 seconds right now. It's taken much longer than I intended it to, but, you know, it could be a good thing, who knows. Maybe I'm being more detailed in this one. Oh, great. That was awesome. Alright, I'm just going to strip some fibers from my Zonker strip. And I'm going to load them up. And this time, they're not going to slide around. Now I'm going to grab the thread with my hackle pliers. Oh, shoot. And, you see, that's one of those things that it's annoying, but it doesn't matter. I just load them right back in, twist up my thread, and it's back to business as usual. And I am going to try and get a better dubbing loop on this one. I don't know exactly what happened last time, but that just wasn't a great dubbing loop. So I'm just spinning the crap out of it right now, getting it to like a circle. Now I'm just going to use the rotary tool real fast, just stroke that. I'm going to secure that with my thread, my dubbing loop. Now I'm going to trim. And you can see there's a bit of the loop left, but that doesn't really matter. That tag end can be cut or tied down with incredible ease. So I'm not concerned about that at all. Now I'm going to take more of my dark brown dubbing, and while stroking back these fibers, I'm going to build a little like dubbing dam, like how you build thread dams on certain patterns for certain things. It's more comparable to how I built that little dam of lead wire at the beginning of this video. Alright, now I have a bit of dubbing laid down there, and a nice little throat on this fly. And now we can whip finish. So, this fly has an incredible swimming action. The rabbit zonker strips really swim well, like probably better than bucktail in my opinion, because they're more wavy, more loose, and it looks great. This is a fairly natural color, and it's just a great pattern to have in your tackle box for just a variety of species, but mainly like predatory species. You could probably even tie this in like a chartreuse and white for saltwater fishing, and it wouldn't go poorly. So yeah, thanks for watching.